Today, I want to talk about the character Vassago, someone I made a video about recently being perhaps a friend of Stolas's, but who others say may actually be in love with Stolas. My name is Impcut, welcome back to Cartoon Universe, and let's break it all down. Now, Vasago is one of the more intriguing members of the Ars Goetia, as he has an actual history and connection to Stolas. Unlike most of the Goetia, who range from aloof to absolutely evil, Vasago comes across as very supportive, and not just to people in general, but to Stolas in particular. During the trial, he not only advocated for Stolas to be present and defend himself, but also cheered with genuine enthusiasm when Stolas began to sing. To me, it felt like camaraderie that Stolas just didn't have time to acknowledge. But others noticed that Vasago's actions could be interpreted as more romantic even, and it would certainly explain why Stolas seems so different from Vasago despite Vasago having such an interest in him. Almost as if it's a very one-sided dynamic that Stolas isn't even 100% sure exists. In my previous video, I had theorized that Stolas and Vasago might be friends or even possibly brothers, perhaps sharing the same father in the Ars Goetia. They are both princes, and while there is much more than one king in the Ars Goetia, the only father that we've explored so far is Paimon, the father of Stolas, who mentions having so many sons that he struggles to keep track of which is which. Paimon also has the ability to shapeshift and take on different forms, meaning that he could be the father of many different Goetia, not even just different bird species, but different species in general. Because of that, I theorized in my previous video that they might have something like a distant relative vibe. Regardless of how closely they could be related, their bond was likely going to be determined by the amount of times they got to see each other, which was probably not very often, and only during official Goetia business. They could bond during that time, perhaps explaining why Vasago has an interest in Stolas, but it raises the question of why we haven't heard of Vasago so far when hearing about Stolas' life. Stolas' flashbacks consistently show him as a lonely child, disconnected from others in the Goetia. If he had a friend like Vasago growing up, it would have been a defining part of his backstory, even if they were extremely distant, as it would have been one person supporting him in the place he needed it most. However, even beyond the flashbacks we get that were mostly focused on Blitz, no such connection is ever hinted at. Stolas acts as if his life has always revolved around his duty as a prince and his father's expectations, with him seemingly not even having any real casual friends until he meets Blitz. Not that Blitz is a casual friend, but he's so starved for any attention at this point that Blitz is the closest thing he has to a childhood friend, not Vasago. Stolas' mindset throughout much of his life appears to be entirely focused on Blitz as his first meaningful connection. Even after having Octavia, Stolas still sees Blitz as his escape. This indicates to me that regardless of what Vasago is doing to be in Stolas' life, Stolas is at the very least not noticing it. Even if not directly related, Vasago may have been around Stolas at certain Goetia functions during their upbringing. And it's perhaps possible that Stolas just doesn't pay very much attention to Vasago even when Vasago is giving him a lot of attention, perhaps seeing him as just another Goetia who he can't really trust. Vasago is very interestingly not present at Stella's not divorced party, a gathering filled almost entirely with bird-based Goetia, the exact kind of party you think Vasago himself would be invited to. And Dreelfist didn't seem to be there himself either, but this absence reinforces the idea that Vasago has an interest in Stolas, but that they don't have a particular connection. Vasago's sexuality was officially confirmed through the Pride poster art released on VivziePop's Twitter account during Pride Month. Here, the poster had many of the characters' canon sexualities shown with different colored flags. This included some new information about a lot of characters. For instance, it confirmed that Ozzy is pansexual, Luna is bisexual, and even Mammon was featured decked out in asexual Pride colors. The most important character here, of course, is Vasago though, who not only has rainbow flag sunglasses, but as my editor and thumbnail artist Aldo pointed out to me, his feathers have been changed to resemble the modern gay men's flag with its green and blue stripes, to distinguish it from the more general LGBT-friendly rainbow flag. In addition to this, VivziePop has apparently been liking and positively reacting to fan art that depicts Vasago and Stolas in romantic scenarios. Something I like to imagine she wouldn't do if it was intended for them to actually be brothers. And while it doesn't confirm anything outright canon in the story, it shows that this may be where VivziePop wants these characters to go on some level, but that doesn't mean Vasago will outright replace Blitz. Unlike Stolas, Vasago seems to have a much easier time accepting and expressing his sexuality. He appears to be confident and comfortable in his identity, which is similar to Andreelfis, who I would say openly flaunts his sexuality in a way that Stolas can't. This difference seems to come down primarily to the dynamics of marriage within the Goetia. While Andreelfis and possibly even Vasago may have been paired with supportive partners, Stolas was saddled with Stella. Stella, as we've seen, not only fails to offer Stolas any kind of support, but actively antagonizes him, and her cruelty and lack of understanding likely forced Stolas to suppress parts of himself for much of his adult life. It wasn't until he met Blitz again that Stolas seemed to begin to truly explore and accept his identity. Meanwhile, characters like Vasago and Andrealphys, who probably don't have oppressive dynamics in their marriages, are able to just more so be themselves. I say all this because Vasago may have spent a lot of his life harboring a quiet crush on Stolas, not wanting to really out him and not really wanting to push Stolas into an identity he wasn't ready to accept. I think Vasago himself was actively flirting with Stolas, as he does seem to even just cheer from the audience and want everyone to know how much he appreciates Stolas. But with Stolas going through his own issues, he may have never noticed it. It would be really funny to see some flashbacks where we find out that Vasago has been around for most of Stolas' life, but that he hasn't really been paying attention to him. At Verosika's Halloween party, Stolas cried about how he just wants someone to want him, to chase him, to have that authentic feeling romance. And we can find out that Vasago has been doing this all along, with Stolas just not realizing it. With Stolas just being blissfully unaware. With that in mind, I imagine that Vasago would transition to trying to be just a supportive presence in Stolas' life. But after Blitz, Stolas has explored himself enough that he was ready to explore romance with another person, just making out with a succubus on the dance floor. Now Stolas is back with Blitz again and seems really happy just living with him, as we can see the difference between him eating breakfast at home in his mansion and eating breakfast with Blitz in his apartment. But that doesn't mean this couple is out of the woods yet, and they're gonna have some struggles in seasons 3 and 4. Along the way, I think it would be very interesting if they had a little bit of a breakup, and perhaps this time they get to explore dating other people for more than one makeout session. Vasago could reach out to Stolas now that he's in exile from the Goetia, and they could form something of a bond, particularly after things become stressful with Blitz. Maybe at first Vasago can be sort of the experienced mentor who teaches Stolas how to handle his relationship with Blitz as he's in it. But when things eventually sour and they take something of a break, maybe that will be when Vasago swoops in and takes Stolas for himself. Not forever, of course, because Blitz and Stolas are obviously the endgame here, but if they're going to have something of a breakup, it makes sense to me that Stolas might end up dating someone like Vasago in that time in between, only leading him to realize that he really does want to be with Blitz and that they are the one true pairing. Of course, along the way, we'd also get a lot of shenanigans involving the Goetia with Andrealphys, and eventually we have to bring back Paimon to punish Stolas. But what do you guys think? Let me know if you think Vasago is Stolas' friend, admirer, or brother in the comments down below, and please be respectful to these gay demons as they figure out their sexualities.